trainings. So today we're talking about weight management strategies beyond diet. And I think this is where my coaching trainings really helped. I feel like in our trainings, we got some of it, but probably not enough to help our weight management patients specifically. So here are the categories I laid out. What I tend to see when patients are struggling beyond, we give them recommendations based on diet. They go off and they do their thing, but they come back and they haven't lost weight. They gained, they're struggling. It's too hard. So I categorize them this way. Is it related to emotions? If it is, these are the people that are feeling deprived. They self-sabotage. They're trying to soothe another need. So a lot of times this is the person that has the emotional eating. And what we need to do here is just really provide support and ideas to help them through. The second one is education. I think we're pretty familiar with this. They just need more education, or they need education in a different way. So these people, I'll show you some different ways we educate them, but this could be just lack of food knowledge. It's really hard in one session if they have no idea what a carbohydrate is or a protein or a fat to give them enough information in one session. So handouts can be really helpful, or videos. Sometimes it's about them eating at the wrong time. They might have disordered eating, and then we can talk a little bit about the medication dosing. The next big area I see is mindset. Here, these are the people that lack the preparation. They mindlessly eat. They really have a mismatch of what their efforts need to be in comparison to the goals that they make. These are the people that have a lot of excuses. So I have great ideas here on how we can help them focus and provide guidance. And then dysfunction. We touched on this last time, but this is where we need to have extra attention on the different health conditions that they have, whether it be gut health, thyroid, their muscle mass. I'm also going to talk about inflammation and some additional stressors today. So I do want to stop and ask this question. I want you to think about it. And please put in the chat. I have those 4 areas down here at the bottom. Where do you see patients struggle the most? So you can just pick one of those or all of them. And then where do you struggle the most with counseling patients? So if you can just enter in the chat, I'd be really curious to hear where each of you are with where your patients struggle and where you struggle the most. Might help me it might help me look at or focus more on one area over another. Are you guys able to see the chat? Because so far I haven't seen anybody put anything in. Okay. Thank you, Margaret. Mindset for clients. Mindset. Yeah, we'll talk about motivational interviewing. This is where that coaching piece really does come in. Mindset. Okay, so most of us have some with that. Okay, mindset and emotions. Great. And I'm interested how you all feel about that. Does that tend to be a tricky area for you? Okay, and dysfunction. I know when people get past the diet and exercise piece, they follow a general plan and they have dysfunction. They have metabolic dysfunction, and we do need to help them on a deeper level then. Yeah, it's hard to address it all in an hour. We really have time constraints, and a patient will come in and think we have to fix everything in one session for them, and there's just so much to uncover. Okay, so this is a great start. Keep filling it in if you'd like. It's nice to see and have some feedback there. Okay, so I feel like this is it can be a really heavy topic with patients. I don't know about you, but when we get deep into the whys of their overeating and relationship with food, there are a lot of people in tears in my office. And so I want to make this an uplifting conversation. And I think too, like making the environment for that patient really comfortable and uplifting as well. And I will say, listening more than talking, but we do have to direct that conversation. I'm sure you've had those patients that just ramble on and just need somebody to talk to, but it's a real skill to be able to direct that conversation to productive topics. I've found those patients to like having them fill out more sort of like intake forms along the way, so I don't have to ask as many questions, can be helpful. Empathizing, but not taking on their energy. I'm sure you've all felt that, where that patient walks in the room and they suck your energy out. So just keeping up boundaries there, expectations up front. They all think we're going to, solve the weight on the scale and it's going to drop just after their first visit, but really setting boundaries around, we can help them with the habits and the skills and the foods, but it really is up to them to put the work in. I've also seen providers become more of that friend, have a friend relationship with these patients, and then it takes away from the authority or the expert piece that we offer. And I don't think people feel as accountable to someone that they have that friend relationship with. So always making sure, yes, you want them comfortable, but not getting too friendly, giving them the tools, not doing the work. Recognizing how many patients you can see in a day without feeling fatigue or burnout, or even the little things you do between sessions, if it's just some deep breathing or listening to music or walking for 5 minutes. I think all of those things are really important to be there and present for each of our patients. Okay, so I just found this. So I've been really diving into the research out there still as we're putting together all of these different presentations. And I thought this one was interesting. And I can't stress enough how we are here as the dietitians to fill the gap. This one, it was a very small study, but it was brand new. And what it was looking at is why we're having issues with like from the patient who has obesity to them getting the care that they need. And the results, what they saw was lack of resources. This is a big one. So we're the ones that can provide those resources. The healthcare professionals' knowledge gap. So this is educating more healthcare providers in what we can offer as dietitians. Lack of understanding on the patient's part of how important this is to their overall health, the emotional impact and support from family and friends. So we can be here to fill the gap in these different ways. So I thought this was an interesting topic. Okay, so we are going to dive into emotions, and I hope this doesn't overwhelm you guys today, but I have a lot of different things in here, ideas to think about. And in the course portal, I have links to all of these different quizzes, all of these different books, all the stuff I'm talking about. So something that's actually really helped me, this bottom one here where it says resources, this is about emotional regulation techniques. It's called PQ. And it's essentially a way of having regulation of your emotions. So it's not extreme. It's not to one end of like super overexcitable or anxiety and depressed. It primes your brain to stay kind of in that middle space so that you aren't having, you think about people and how they eat food if they're excited, they eat food if they're bored, they eat food if they're stressed. So it's taking away those more extreme emotions and it's helping prime the brain in a positive way to face the day. And they're really simple techniques. One of my favorite and really easy ones that is a takeaway, it's about consistency of priming. And it's just literally rubbing your fingertips together for 30 seconds and focusing just on that. So it stops the mind from going and it really helps ground and center. So that's something, if they're really dealing with emotional eating, you can have them preventatively do throughout the day. I'm a big one on finding alternatives. If they feel deprived in a diet, they are not going to stick to it. So helping them in your sessions, finding things, understanding why they sabotage themselves. This one can go deep. building up their confidence, and then really about the basics. We have extreme emotions when we're not sleeping well, when we're not eating good food, when we're not getting movement. So all of those things are important. At the top right here, this is a book called Awaken the Strongest Self. And I really liked these 5 qualities. I think these all are ones that will help with success for somebody long term. Safety within themselves. I'm sure you've heard this too. They just don't feel good in their body. They're frustrated with their body. So when you can get them to a place where they feel safe, and happy with themselves, that can be a real game changer. Choosing actions that are really congruent with the higher values. So helping them see the mismatch of what they're doing to what they want to be doing and bringing that closer. Sitting in the present, what we're eating right now, how we feel right now, not I ate that in the past. What am I going to be eating the next how many days? I have this event coming up, like really staying present. Focusing on what they can do instead of just constantly blaming. We've seen that before. And then connection to the deeper resources. So many people feel alone. They feel like what's wrong with them? They're the only ones that are dealing with this. So when you can help support them in a way that they don't feel alone, that can be a game changer too. All right, so here's another thing to consider. I really like the book Stress Less, Accomplish More. This one really goes into the science of meditation and mindfulness. Oftentimes I think it's hard to sell people on doing these practices because they say, oh, I tried it and it didn't work. And I like this main point in here. We meditate to get good at life, not to get good at meditation. And it takes practice. And so, like this book for them, we can't sit there and convince them of this, but we can give them the tools. So, this could be one to consider. I also have another, sorry, I'm letting someone in here. I also have another resource at the bottom, this positive psychology for self-soothing. I find patients at the end of the day say, that's my trickiest time. I get home and I just want to relax. And oftentimes that's when they're trying to self-soothe because they didn't soothe themselves all throughout the day. So, and then people are going to food. So trying different things, whether it be a candle or essential oils, a good perfume, having music on when they get back. On our TV in the morning, I put YouTube on and have like one of the nature scenes and some jazz or nature sounds in the background. It's just a nice way to prep and to create a good environment. Warmth is another one. So if it's a bath or a sauna or a shower, focused breathing, movement, massage. And then they go in positive psychology at the very bottom of that link. They talk about the butterfly hug. They talk about tapping. If you haven't tried tapping, I've had patients have great results with that. And then another one's havening. And this is just a very simple technique of rubbing down your arms and just doing that for a couple times. I give it a try and see how you feel from it. The physical touch piece is really important, and it's something that can really help calm and soothe people. So when they first can acknowledge, yes, I'm wanting to stress eat, and then two, getting them to try one of these techniques, it can be really powerful. I don't think people stop and think either about what gives them energy, what doesn't give them energy. So by the end of the day, they're completely depleted instead of taking that 5-minute walk, doing some deep breathing, having a great conversation, all of those things. So we need to find ways to build up their energy throughout the day. And I can't tell you how often I have these conversations over and over and over, and they think that they're fine. We'll test labs, which can be really impactful to show, no, you aren't fine. But some different wearables can be really helpful too. So a Fitbit, an Apple Watch, the Oura Ring, and a lot of those now connect into, we use Practice Better, they'll connect into Practice Better so that you can monitor things more closely. Okay, moving over to education. This is an area I feel we are pretty familiar with, so I'm not going to spend too much time here, but I do want to show you our resources. So people end up in a couple different categories. Lack of food knowledge, we need to assess that. I There are times where people trick me and I think they know what they're talking about, but we have to in many different ways really assess if they do understand or not. Have them repeat the diet back to you after you've given it to them. What I really like is having them give you a sample day. So here's the education, here's what, I'm suggesting. Now, how would you interpret this, or what would be a sample day for you? That one's been really impactful, because then right at that moment, I'm able to say, I would make a couple tweaks so that when they first start out, they have some success. For some people, it's walking them through the store, their cupboards, going through a grocery list. They'll need to talk to their doctor, obviously, for medication adjustments, but you should by now have some awareness of when a patient might need a change or an adjustment. They might need to go up or down in the medication. Are they having too many side effects? Do we need to go down? Are they not eating anything? Do they need to go down? Or is it feel like it's not working anymore? Do they need to go up? They might need to take a break. There are so many people that, it worked for them for a while, so they keep doing the same thing, but it's not working anymore. Do those receptors need a break? Do they need to change things up for a while? Or is it that they need some supportive supplements? Peptides can work really well in conjunction. So those could be some ideas. Disordered eating is a really big one for weight loss patients. They pretty much all, I've noticed, have food rules. This is good, this is bad. I'll do this, I won't do that. They're always looking forward or looking backwards, never really in the moment. So these people might not even be paying attention to what they're actually eating. And then eating at the wrong times, I think, is a really big one. And this can be really individualized by the person. And it's about walking through the day and assessing where they're hungry, where they're having struggles. So if they're always hungry at night, more food earlier in the day, they might just have that need for soothing. So finding those other techniques. Are they distracted and not have any hunger cues? So they're skipping meals and water and not eating enough. Or are they eating too late and then they're not hungry in the morning? So these are all really common things we see with patients on these GLPs. Or if they still on these GLPs are always hungry and grazing, do we still have a blood sugar issue? Maybe they're not at the right dose. Do they have these gut issues? Or have they never transferred from a carb burner to more of that fat burner? So I showed these to you last time. Here are two of the things we utilize. So we try to give just a nice overview, simplistic way of this amount of protein, this amount of fat, healthy, non-starchy vegetables, the whole grains, just to give that general picture, but that doesn't work for everybody. So we do also have emails that go out that go to exactly recipes by the day. Here's another one I like to use because some people don't like the real tight restriction, and it feels better to them to say, are there a couple, like let's pick 2 or 3 on the list that we want to start focusing on, and then 2 or 3 that we want to focus on getting rid of. So for some people, this is much more positive to say, okay, yes, I'm going to reduce my high sugar foods and my alcohol, and I really want to focus on fermented foods and healthy fats, and giving them that option and some wiggle room with this. So for some people, we can start here and see how they do. These are also 2 really nice handouts. That one is, you can see a grocery list. So some people just want to take something to the grocery store. What is okay for me to have and not have? So we've categorized things into protein options, fruits and vegetables, healthy fats, whole grains, and seasoning. So they can just go off the list and pick things. And then we have another handout. So these are convenience products. Everybody asks us for it. Yes, we want everybody to eat whole, clean foods. We know it's not complete reality that everybody's going to do it. So we do give some better options, but really stress that these things are not meant to take the place of your fruits and vegetables and lean proteins and all of that, but some at least better options. Because I just really find people have lack of awareness around how to evaluate what's healthier. So we have the little note down here with a food label as well. Okay, on to mindset. So this is where everybody said people have the hardest time. All right, so if you look over here at this image, Gretchen Rubin has a book called The Four Tendencies, and there's a quiz online that I've had patients do this. So to help give them awareness around how they feel accountable. So, for example, you can see the upholder, they are able and willing to meet outer expectations. So, if we set expectations for them, they will uphold it. If they set expectations for themselves, they will hold it. And then you have the more difficult people, and this is the bucket I fall into, the rebel. So, we resist outer expectations, we resist inner expectations. So, you really, based on these different types, you have to work with that patient differently. So you can see, for example, the questioner, if we tell them you should do this and this and this, they are going to resist every single thing you say. So if you understand that they're that type of person, you have to have them create their own expectations in order for them to meet their goals. Some other things to consider. Bookends to the day, I think, are really powerful. So starting your morning out right with like a stack of a couple things that you do, whether it be drinking water, not starting with your phone in your hand and doing some, stretching or a morning walk. And then at nighttime too, same thing. We know how much sleep impacts weight, and we want to make sure they're set up for success for sleep. I really encourage you to schedule things in for them, the structure versus flexibility. People will always say they want flexibility, but it oftentimes is they don't do a real well job with that flexibility. So finding times throughout the day, trying to set at least some boundaries, or I'm going to do a walk at this time. I am going to exercise 3 times a week, whatever it is. The identity versus I must. I try to stop patients from saying, well, I have to do this, I must do this, and creating it more as their identity. I want to do this. So when I catch people saying that, I try to help them acknowledge that and reframe it. I also ask them at times, have they actually committed to what we talked about? You have to take that moment to actually make the commitment. The ideas all sound great, but make sure that they are actually committing. And then building resilience. I feel like people wait for the right moment to go on their weight loss plan. Oh, I have this coming up and I have this and whatever. And life's going to throw things at you no matter when. And building resilience can be really helpful. I have a link to a quiz for resilience. So having them fill that out might be really eye-opening for them. And it also includes ways to build that. I like this one. I took it from the exam room nutrition here. So helping them shift their weight loss mindset. So going from I'll start my diet tomorrow to, okay, today wasn't perfect. I'm making progress one meal at a time. And I encourage you to use these when you hear the patient say this over and over again, or the patient really creates awareness around this. I can't stick to a diet. All right, I'm learning how to choose foods that nourish my body and my mind. So you can see the shift to a much more positive way from an excuse to something that feels empowering. So these could be things that you could try with your patient. This is where motivational interviewing comes in as well. And what we're trying to do is when they're in that contemplation phase, they're not able to get to commit to doing something. We have to take the steps of where they're at. So we have to find the gap between where they're at now and where they want to go. And I've had people say, understand this is what it takes to get here. Are you willing to do that? And then they're like, no, I'm not. So I guess I'm going to lose weight slower. Okay, great. Now that you're not conflicted with yourself, you know what it's going to take and you've committed, now it's a much easier path. I do ask them how confident they are in their goals at the end as well, from 1 to 10. And if they honestly will say, okay, I'm at a 5. Well, how can I get you to a 6 in confidence? Well, if I planned this better, if I told my partner about it, so you find ways to increase success. And it's about that one small step. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Other things to think about with mindset. If you're going through, you're trying to help them in all these different ways, some other things might be going on, body image issues, just happiness or other sort of stressors going on in their life, and then past trauma, current trauma, all of those things can really be underlying, but the patient's not necessarily talking about it. All right, here are some more things. Consistency over perfection. I will call people out on this all the time when I'm seeing them talk about it. Simplicity over overwhelm. We are bombarded and overwhelmed all of the time. And I can't say I'm not guilty of this, just wanting to give them all the information and laying it all out. But I have found the more simple we can make it, the less overwhelmed people feel. And I always try, especially first, second session, biggest wins early on, find that low hanging fruit that's going to give them some strong success to begin with. When a patient will come in, they're often like, well, I did this and this and this and this wrong. And I'm like, hold up, let's talk about the things that you did well. Let's celebrate those wins. And that will just show you in their mind, they're constantly evaluating all the negative and not focusing enough on the wins. Reframing those failures as learning points, being really curious about it, not getting hard on themselves about those things. I think incentives, sometimes that works for people for smaller goals, having them go get a massage if they meet their first goal. Or I like trying to set goals around structure and not number on the scale. So if they did all the inputs they said they were going to do, that's when they reward themselves. I think making it visible. I have my own board in my room where I, check all the things off that I want to be doing. So I think for some people, it's whatever works for them, the visibility of saying, yes, I got all these things done and it feels really good. I think asking them to track repetitive negative thoughts is important because that can weigh on us more than we realize. And then helping them stay focused. That's why we rediscuss, goals that they set for last time, every single session, staying focused on those important things. I like breaking down mistaken beliefs too. We hear the excuses of, I don't have enough time, and the money excuse. And so the personal time management chart, I've done it before where I have them fill out just their own circle. How much time's for this? How much time's for this? On and on and on. And what we end up finding is, everybody has this hour scrolling time or 2 hours of Netflix or whatever that they really could be doing something more in alignment with what their goals are. So helping them create awareness around this, or if it's like, wow, all my time is work and I don't have time for my family, how can I create more time for that? All of these pieces are really important when it comes to overall well-being. And I know this chart over here is spending from like a company standpoint, but I wanted to show you this. So if a company has a higher spend per patient, out of pocket for the patient's going to be higher too. So you can see if they say they don't have money to work on their health, they're not going to have money to deal with it later down the road either. So you can see enrollees without an obesity diagnosis, this is the spend the company has over the years. But then an enrollee with an obesity diagnosis, you can see the cost is double, triple the amount. So it does pay to shift their mindset on priority of how they spend their money. So I know I'm speaking to the choir on this, but hopefully by using some of these visuals, it can help your patient as well realize this. This was another brand new study that came out May of 2025 that was looking at the adverse effects. I know this is really busy, so I'm going to just try to summarize what I wanted to show from this. They looked at normal weight, overweight, class one, class two, class three obesity, and then they had these people rank if they had no issue, mild issue, moderate, severe, or very severe. And you can see, like, just by the colors that go up here, that weight changes can really affect a lot of different things from quality of life, pain, fatigue, ability for physical activity, and then some diagnoses. I thought this insomnia one was interesting. It started high to begin with, right? But as we get more overweight, we have more issues with sleep, which also makes it harder to lose weight. So it becomes a cycle. And that's why getting to the root and helping them on all of these levels will help reverse this. So for some people that have that class three obesity, it feels like an uphill battle. And just acknowledging that they're going through a lot more potential related to how they feel is, I think, important for us as clinicians. All right, so I am going to move on to the dysfunction section. So this is when they are eating really well, they are exercising, and they have some of those things and it's like, there must be something else going on. So we talked a little bit about this before, but gut issues, some of the quick things that we can do or assess would be to have more easily digested foods if they're dealing with gastroparesis, bulk to the stool with fibrous foods or some fiber supplementation, promoting motility, the vagal nerve stimulations, really simple things you can do before you start eating. The relaxation techniques, humming, gargling, will all help promote good digestion. And then they might need some digestive support, some enzymes or HCl, for example. Endocrine dysfunction, I think this is important to look at. This is one where are really helpful. So, do they have a blood sugar imbalance? This is one to assess too as they're starting these medications and then sometimes going up to the highest dose. Do they have hypoglycemia? It's not always as prevalent, or patients won't necessarily be as aware of that. So, assessing for that, I think, is important. Ensuring that they're getting all the foods that feed the thyroid pathways, any hormone issues. Here's where I find it really fun to try a CGM. You can get them, patients can get them really easily from Stello now. It's $90 or $99 for 1 month. And it's a really cool experiment for them to see how they are doing related to the types of foods that they're eating. Another easy calculation, if you have a fasting glucose and a fasting insulin, would be the HOMA-IR calculation, because this gives you insulin sensitivity. So we can kind of see how these patients are doing from an insulin resistance standpoint. And then just as a review, low muscle mass or losing muscle mass. So are they eating enough protein? Are they digesting? Are they doing their resistance training, and how are their hormones? And I would really suggest doing those body composition measurements on a regular basis, because if you don't, you really don't know what patients are losing. I'm a big proponent of gut health. There's so many reasons. I'm going to talk about a few of them today. The stool testing can be really impactful because it creates awareness for the patient on what is actually dysfunctional. I think when we just say, oh yeah, you got to focus on gut health, it's not as, when they see that actual test result, wow, this is out of balance. Wow, I'm not digesting foods. It helps bring that awareness to them, and they see it. They're more motivated. So things I like to look at are the short chain fatty acids, if they're having enough of the acetate, propionate, butyrate. And if that's out of balance, it's going to show you that they don't have a real nice, diverse diet. They're either favoring a certain macro over another, the standard American diet versus a healthier diet. So you can see some things from that. Calorie extraction, I think there's a lot more to be done study-wise with this, but what general studies show is that the firmicutes extract more of the calories, the Bacteroidetes extract less. So it really is not just about the food that we ingest. It's really the types of bacteria we have, and how many calories we're going to extract from the food can and will depend on the types of bacteria we have. There are certain bacteria that produce inflammation in the gut. These are the LPS producers, the lipopolysaccharide producers, along with other types. But this is a real big area. And when we have that low grade inflammation, we're not going to be losing weight. So looking at those LPS producers, we know hormones are produced within the gut. They regulate the different appetite signals with ghrelin and leptin as well. So really important that all of those things are in check so that we feel full and satiated from a meal. The mood, the gut-brain connection, I think more patients are understanding this or have heard it. I do like to help them see how impactful this can be. So I talk about, okay, have you had a stressful thing happen? Have you had to go and do a really big presentation? And did you start to have stomach issues? You know, that diarrhea or an upset stomach, that's that gut brain connection. When you feel that acute stress, it can cause definite changes in motility in the gut. So that can be an impactful way to help them understand that it is a really strong thing. And then cravings is a big one as well. That overgrowth of candida and other yeasts can really cause an increase in the desire for carbohydrates and can often increase in overeating. So I wanted to show you these two slides. I'm not going to go too into depth, but what I wanted to show is just the visual of how these GLP-1s work within the gut. So let's go to this right one over here first. So this little guy here is an L cell. And what it does when food comes into contact with the villi here is that it produces this GLP-1. The GLP-1 has this signaling down into the muscle layer, the nervous system, and then you can see that the vagal nerve comes up here to the GLP-1, the parasympathetic fibers come all the way up here. So you can see it intricately, how this system works to stimulate the different parts related to GLP-1. So you can understand when these L cells are damaged, when they're not working properly, it can really cause issues with the production of your natural GLP-1. So this is how it works. We have food, fibers in the diet, the gut microbiome. These bacteria come into contact with them. And you can see we have short chain fatty acids that have signaling right on the L cells. You can see bile acids, they turn to secondary bile acids, and then those go down into the L cell. We talked about this 2-OG glycerol last time as being one of those foods that are known to trigger GLP-1. It's through this GPR119 receptor. And then we're breaking down amino acids, and then those can be receptors as well. So the L cells are where it's at for production of GLP-1 naturally. And this is the whole idea, that we want to get their gut in a better place so that they can produce this on their own. When we talk about dysfunction related to inflammation, food's a really big one. So here's the little picture down on the right from Dr. Axe that goes into when we have this GI inflammation, what happens is these different things are able to get through the gut lining, which causes food intolerances, immune system issues, autoimmunity ultimately. So anyone with an autoimmune condition, I'm always looking at leaky gut and food sensitivities because it's a really fast way to help reduce or, reverse some of those issues. So food sensitivities can be really interesting. They can show up in so many different ways: mood issues, water retention, weight problems, headaches, sweating, fatigue, bladder issues. I've seen runny nose, cravings, blood sugar dysregulation from like a histamine standpoint. Skin problems is another really big one. So my favorite is the MRT leap test. And I like that one because it gives a broader look at all sort of inflammatory responses and especially the histamines. And so many people with GI issues have some sort of histamine issue as well. So, helping them understand this leads to autoimmune conditions. And oftentimes, when someone develops one, they're more likely to get another. So, if we can stop it at that gut level, they might need to go on an elimination diet or AIP. I really prefer MRT because then we know exactly what they can eat and they don't have to be as restricted as long. And then there are IgG tests, the IgE food allergy test, but the MRT is a cell mediated response. Dysfunction from toxins. So you probably have seen a real increase in fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver. And a lot has to do with our toxic load. And I like this graphic here because it shows the importance of nutrition, all the enzymes and cofactors that's needed for detoxification. So you have a toxin here that's fat soluble. You have to go through phase one to get it more water soluble, and then all the way water soluble to be excreted. So we need all these different reactions to be happening, all these different antioxidants down here in going to phase two. So we can really get a backup in different areas. One, if we don't have the right nutrition. Two, it could be some genetics that are causing backups. And then three, just the load that we have. So, and especially I mentioned this last time, but as we lose weight and as we lose weight quickly, all those toxins that are stored in that fat cell can be released, and can your body handle it? So making sure their liver is in good function and maybe even supporting liver function would be helpful during this time. Body brush or the lymphatic drainage stuff like the brushing can help with that. The rebounding, sauna is a really good one. Just movement in general can be really helpful there. You can do toxic burden assessments. So there are tests for mold, heavy metal, histamines, that sort of thing. So if they're presenting with some really strong issues symptom wise, this might be good to do before they really start losing significant weight and really pushing that need for nutrition. So the goal for detoxification, daily bowel movements, maybe even 2 a day, that liver gallbladder support, the body brushing, the movement, the sauna, being in a restorative state more often. We do not detox well. It's that same sort of thing, sympathetic versus parasympathetic. We need to be in a relaxed state. And then I've seen some really high antioxidant needs and B vitamin needs for gut health patients or, autoimmune patients or even just overweight. I'd like to talk about this a little bit because cortisol is a big player and kind of something that's not always thought about related to weight. High cortisol is. We all know this patient, and we've all probably treated this patient, the high performing woman that is running around with high cortisol. They're wired but tired, low libido. Some of them you can even see that puffy face, and after you've worked with them a couple weeks, how it really changes. They don't sleep well. Their periods might be off. They're the ones with brain fog or the midsection belly. These are all the ones to think about high cortisol. That high cortisol, will increase the appetite. It causes more fat storage, insulin resistance. But what I more want to discuss is that patient that goes from high cortisol levels to actually starting to bottom out low. So you can see this graph down here. This is one of the hormone tests you can do. there's a the cortisol awakening response right here. And then you go throughout the rest of the day to see where your cortisol is. So this person, we want the cortisol to rise in the morning, come back down during the day, and then by nighttime for bed, it's nice and low. What we end up seeing to begin with for stressed people, like they're coming up, but they're staying high and they're wired at nighttime and they don't sleep well. Then what we start to see is that crash of the adrenals where they don't have a high response. So they'll come up, but not very high. And then they'll dip down low. Maybe they'll come up and they might even come up at nighttime. But it's the ones that say, I can't get out of bed in the morning. I am really tired. Those are the ones that have more of the decreased energy levels, just tired all the time. They have increased cravings for salt and sugar, and they start to have hormonal imbalances. So the body will always preference the adrenals over the hormones. And we have a precursor hormone, pregnenolol. We start with cholesterol, and then we have pregnenolol, and then it shunts off into our sex hormones or it goes to adrenals. And I often see, when we have these adrenal needs, either high cortisol or eventually low, it really messes with the patient's sex hormones as well. And they either have this like an imbalance or just all really low hormones. That's another reason why when I look at labs, I'm looking at cholesterol levels and making sure they're not too low when I start to see hormone issues. Now, I know I covered some of the stuff really fast. If more of that functional nutrition piece is completely new to you, don't sweat it. It's taken years for me to feel like I'm at a place where I understand all of this related to metabolic health. Sherry and I are creating another course, a functional weight loss or metabolic health nutrition course that we're going to be doing in the next couple of months. We're working on getting CE approval for that as well. So that's going to be coming down the line. Yeah, good question, Margaret. So what are some ways to help improve low cholesterol acutely? Low cortisol. So this is it's hard to have them bounce back really fast. It's going to be kind of that really nourishing the self, making sure they get enough sleep. These are people that I actually recommend smaller meals throughout the day. I don't for most people, but they need some nourishment all throughout the day. So maybe adding a snack or two in the day for them. What is it? Licorice, the supplement licorice, as long as they don't have blood pressure issues, is a really good one to help. Also, supplementation with DHEA, one of those more precursor hormones. Obviously, check their hormones and stuff too, but that can be a really good way to help them out with that. The B vitamins, increasing that, but also making sure that, like I had said before, that their cholesterol level is not too low. I find people on statins, they're bragging on how low their cholesterol is, and it's at 120, 130. We need cholesterol in order to produce so many different things. So I would check there as well. Okay, so some things to think about. How are you presenting your information to patients? Is it overwhelming? Are you coming in as an authoritative and that's not how they, connect with you? Are you creating that nice environment? Are you allowing them to talk? And then are you tracking it and repeating to show the importance? So are you maybe on an intake form, are you tracking their emotions, their understanding, their mindset? These are all things that I like having in a form so that I don't have to spend all my time each session going through and asking them. And then I can have a comparison actually by the weeks to also see, are they making improvements in areas? Did they shift in a negative way in one area, and do we need to focus there? So I like tracking a lot of things that way. Are you looking for dysfunction? So if they're having really slow weight loss, if they're on the GLP and they are not losing a pound and a half in 2 weeks, that's the average that we're seeing. If they're not, is there some other dysfunction that's going on? And then I know I threw a lot out at you today. So what are some of your favorite new tools to use? I hope you found these as helpful. We are going to be sharing the forms that we use for our consultations. That'll be in Thinkific as well. So, in summary, treat each person individually with respect to their obstacles. Have a big bag of tricks and even more resources that you can hand out as needed. If anyone does get stuck, try to help them with that one small step forward. Maybe it's as simple as you have them write one thing they're going to do down on a piece of paper and they take it with them that day. And then holding them accountable. I've personally found by the time they come to me, tracking hasn't worked. And a lot of them are actually adverse to tracking. And not because there's someone watching over them, it's more because they're in their head about trying to track every single thing. I found if people just take a picture of their food, it feels a lot less heavy for them. So finding a way that is their unique way of you holding them accountable is going to be best. And then I have in the resources some different books, all of those different self-assessments, a food sensitivity handout that we use, and then some detox supplements that we recommend and personally use. All right, so I also see, will you be sharing the food and convenience product list? Yes, all of those handouts are in the portal as well. All right, yeah, I can't hear you, Laura. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Hey, Erica, how are you? That
Hi.
was great.
Thank you.
So I think all of us talked about mindset, and I'm just curious about this because sometimes I have somebody come in. I don't know if they're being asked to come in by their spouse or by their doctor, whatever, and somebody sits down and says, "You can't help me." And, you know, sometimes I actually say to people, your belief system is going to impact you. And if you don't think that I can't help you, then I probably can help you, but you still have to pay me. So, you know, this is a lot of people have this, not only for weight loss, but also, I'm in functional medicine. So also in that area. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's that, and of course it's spam. What else is new? Um, so do you have any tips about that or any resources? Because I feel like, most of the time I feel like a food and nutrition therapist. It's beyond being a dietitian. There's,
Yeah.
and there's some days when somebody comes in and says, you can't help me. I want to say, yeah, bye bye.
That's the motivational interviewing and helping them bridge that gap. And I have not been afraid to be that direct and also just say, kind of like you said, well, if you feel that way, then I'm not going to be able to help you. But
Right.
I try to, with some of those people that come in really rough, kill them with kindness, in whatever way, try to connect to them in some way, give them examples of people that thought exactly the same and how you helped them through. I think using an intake form and asking clarifying questions with on it so that they can see you're really digging deep, you're trying to understand them as a person, and just even understanding, like, I'm sorry, you've struggled with this before. I understand how hard it can be and the fear around this. And let's today, like, make this really simple. What's one thing we can walk away as a positive? So I guess, it's going to be individualized as you keep like digging and asking some of those questions. But I think that's where motivational interviewing is probably your best bet at trying to figure out. There's 5 levels or phases of change for a person. So like figuring out where they are in that change And then each of those levels will have like, here's how you address them. So like coffee for me was one thing. Resisted getting rid of or reducing my coffee intake. So I'm in that resistant place. And what you have to do is continue to find education, continue to find that on how to create awareness for them on why it's important. So maybe even helping them, I would say, why are you here and why do you actually want to lose weight? So getting to their deeper why. I think anytime you can just get to a personal level with a patient, that's when they calm down and open up because they've all been to somebody that didn't meet their needs and they're fearful. Sorry, that's kind of a long-winded answer, but I think there's so many ways that you can tackle that.
Okay, and I actually have another question
Okay.
unrelated, and maybe you're going to cover this later on. Have you seen, well, first of all, what are the number of visits? Because I obviously there should be pre-visits before somebody goes on a GLP-1 and post-visits. So I'm wondering how many. And then the second question is, uh, have you, I had to Google this, and I did find some information on GLP-1 and the relationship to hot flashes because I have seen that in clients. So these are people who are they're already on a GLP-1 and then they may come to me for something else, but they're
Got it.
having hot flashes.
And the hot flashes, they can directly correlate it to the GLPs, you're saying?
Absolutely.
Okay. So first thing, how we work at our clinic is we have them come in for a free consultation. So we assess that they're right for the program or we put them on a different program. And then we have an initial session that's like 45 minutes long where we educate them on the medication, but also spend like 20 to 30 minutes on the diet portion of it. We also have them watch a video. I do not like repeating myself and saying the same like diet things over and over. So we actually have a video that goes into exact information on it. And then we usually come in after, and that's when I'll go in and say, so, how do you think you're going to apply this diet plan to see that they understood it? So, that's where they start. And then we have them come in every 2 weeks while they're changing their dosing. And then once they're on a stable dose, we switch to every month. And then in maintenance, people can kind of choose if they just like the nutrition counseling and want a monthly check in, they can. But a lot of people will move out to every 3 months. It really is a time that they get nervous because they felt they did so well on this medication and going off of it's scary. So some of them do want to stay with those monthly appointments for accountability. As far as the hot flashes go, I will have Sherry address that a little bit more in the next. I honestly have not seen like a ton of people that report hot flashes specifically to the GLPs. Now, could it have something to do with how their body's changing? They're getting healthier and it's triggering some different things, but I'd have to think about that one a little bit because I haven't seen that too often.
Yeah, I have a 20-page document on that. It's not a journal article, but it seems to only occur in women who have previously had hot flashes like years ago. So they already have some sort of a sensitivity. So I don't know if it's because of glucose and insulin changing too rapidly, or does it
Yeah.
have to do with cortisol? I don't know if you answered the question that Margaret asked. What are some ways to help improve low cortisol? But maybe
Yeah.
related to that.
Yeah. It might have something to do with that. And I did go over that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That must have been when I had to go get an espresso.
That's all right. No problem. Does anybody else have any questions? I know we're at time. I'm willing to stay on a little bit for any other questions. And I'll write down that question, Laura, and see if we can dig into that and address it a little bit more.
Terrific. Thank you.
Mhm. All right. I think that's it then for today. Well, thank you very much. Sherry's going to be on for next week. She's going to be talking about going more into actually Laura's questions about how we manage them at each of the different appointments. We'll go more into the forms that we use. So we'll really be talking about the protocol and how we structure it for our patients. So, all right.